Hello and welcome back to the Wasteland, everybody. Welcome back to New Vegas, where today we're going to be taking a look at 3 different claws that you can get throughout New Vegas. So these are the various gauntlets that you can get based on different animals throughout the Wasteland. All 3 of these are actually DLC, but they are in different DLCs. So we've got the Yao Guai Gauntlet, which is based off of the Yao Guais, the giant bears that are around New Vegas. These were once black bears that have been changed and mutated thanks to all the years of radiation and everything. And then we also have the Fist of Rawr, which is the Deathclaw Gauntlet. It is the only version of the Deathclaw Gauntlet since there was never a regular version in New Vegas. So let's start out with the Yao Guai Gauntlet. The Yao Guai Gauntlet and the unique version She's Embrace can be found in Zion in the Honest Hearts DLC. You can actually find quite a few of the regular Yao Guai Gauntlets because that is what the Sorrows have as their signature weapon. So if you see a dead Sorrow, you can pick this up off of their body. If you kill a Sorrow, you could take it. I guess you could also reverse pickpocket this if you had a different melee or unarmed weapon that they would switch to, or even potentially a gun that they might switch to. The Yao Guai Gauntlet requires 50 unarmed and 4 strength in order to wield, so actually not very high strength and not a whole lot of unarmed. If you're going into Zion at a fairly low to medium level, but you're going with an unarmed build, this should be something that you can use pretty early on. This does 20 damage per hit, which is okay. It's not the highest amount of damage. 33 damage per second, which is also okay. This doesn't attack the fastest out of any of the unarmed attacks, but it's okay enough. Does 30 crit damage, so more damage with crits than its regular damage, which is a little bit unique. Most weapons just do the same damage as their crit damage, so you get even more whenever you hit crits, which is pretty awesome. This has a 2.5 times crit modifier on it, so you're more likely to hit crits than quite a few other weapons. That's really good. This only costs 22 action points to use in VATS, which isn't very high for an unarmed weapon. So the Yao Guai Gauntlet can be a pretty good option there. This does weigh 10. It is one of the heaviest unarmed weapons in the game. This is actually heavy enough to get cut in half with heavyweight, which is pretty cool. We'll talk about that once we get to perks that affect these. And then this one has a massive 600 item health on it, as well as this weapon and all the weapons we're going to talk about do have the unique effect of ignoring damage threshold and ignoring damage resist. So it doesn't matter whether the enemy is wearing power armor or wearing no armor, you're going to be doing the same amount of damage to them, which makes it so the Yao Guai Gauntlet is very consistent. For the general pros of these weapons, they do have pretty good damage per second. All of these weapons are pretty good. They gradually get better as we go from one to the next. They all have good AP costs as well. They're all really good in a VATS build, and unarmed really does like VATS, so that's pretty nice. And they do have really high item HP, at least with the Yao Guai Gauntlets. The Deathclaw Gauntlet, not as much, but the Yao Guai Gauntlet, 600 HP takes forever to break this, so it can be really, really nice if you just want to be taking this around, especially if you just want to clear up smaller enemies and you don't want to be breaking your good unarmed weapons on something. For the general cons, though, the Deathclaw Gauntlet itself does have low item HP, so that only applies to that one, and these are all very heavy. They're all 10 weight, so heavy weight could cut it in half. You may not even worry about weight, though, with an unarmed and a melee build, since you don't need to have multiple of these around, and you don't need to be carrying around ammunition if you're playing on the hardcore difficulty. So it does have that kind of going for it. I guess the other sort of con for the Yao Guai Gauntlet, at least for a lot of people, is that they don't really like the way that it looks or how much screen it takes up, because it does actually take up quite a bit of your screen, especially when you're blocking. It does make it so a good maybe third of your screen you can't see where enemies are, and there can be enemies hiding behind that. So that can be a little bit frustrating. There are quite a few different perks that can help out with these as well. We've got Slayer, which makes it so you can attack faster with all of these. Very good. Super Slam to knock down enemies. Also very strong. Purifier to kill certain things like Death Claws and other mutated enemies like Super Mutants. And normally Piercing Strike would also help unarmed and melee weapons, but since these already ignore all of the damage threshold and damage resist, it doesn't really matter if you have Piercing Strike or not. Piercing Strike is still a fantastic perk, and I would highly recommend it if you're going to be running an unarmed or a melee build, unless you're just specifically going to be using one of these weapons that completely ignores that aspect of melee and unarmed. For a rating on my tier list, I think I'd put the Yao Guai Gauntlet probably somewhere in the B tier. It's pretty decent overall. I don't always use it for everything, but it does do good damage. Ignoring damage threshold is nice, and being practically unbreakable also helps us out a lot. It's really surprising this thing has 600 item HP. That's the same amount of item HP as something like this machine, which has a ton of item health for a gun. This has just as much, but for an unarmed weapon, which is pretty awesome. The next gauntlet we're going to talk about is She's Embrace. This is the unique Yao Guai Gauntlet. You get this from completing a quest. This is a quest that you do for the Sorrows, the one where it's take drugs, kill a bear, and this is a giant flaming bear, and it is even scarier than the other Yao Guais. It does even more damage, and once you've hurt it so much, then it also splits into multiple bears, at least inside of your vision. Once you do kill this, then you can take She's Paw, and then you take that back to the Shaman, and he will give you She's Embrace. She's Embrace is even better than a regular Yao Guai Gauntlet, where this one also requires 50 unarmed and 4 strength to wield. This one does 25 damage on hit, which is okay, 44 damage per second, which is also okay, nothing way crazy there for an unarmed or a melee weapon. Does 37 crit damage, kind of a weird amount, but it's cool that it has extra crit damage. Has a 3 times crit modifier, so you're really likely to hit crits with this, which is really good. This one only costs 20 action points, so it's even better in a VATS build. This one still weighs 10, and instead of having the massive 600 item health that the regular Yao Guai Gauntlet has, this one has an even higher 900 item HP. That makes it so She's Embrace is practically unbreakable or not going to break anytime soon. Even if you want to use it as your main weapon throughout New Vegas, it's going to take you a very, very long time in order for you to break She's Embrace. This one doesn't really look any different than the regular Yao Guai Gauntlet either. I kind of wish that was something. Maybe every once in a while it'd catch fire or you'd see hallucinations or something, but unfortunately that's not the case. For She's Embrace, I would say that this one is still probably like a B tier for me, but it's very high up into B tier, maybe into A tier. It's a very solid all-around weapon that can kind of do just about whatever you'd want for an unarmed build, but doesn't really feel overpowered, at least compared to some of the other unarmed weapons that we've talked about and will talk about in the future. And then our very last weapon that we need to talk about is called the Fist of Rawr. This is the unique Deathclaw Gauntlet, or I guess it's the only Deathclaw Gauntlet, where this one can be found in the Divide. This is in the Lonesome Road. You do have to kill Rawr in order to get it. He is a unique Deathclaw that has an extremely high amount of HP. He's very tanky. He can deal really high damage to you, but once you kill him, then you can search his body and you can take his hand. Now, there is something that's very unique about this, and that is that Rawr's hand is considered a quest item. So if you take this to the Sierra Madre, it actually won't steal it from you because it's considered a quest item, which is really awesome. That means that you can smuggle the Fist of Rawr into actually dead money, and then it becomes the most powerful weapon in that DLC. This can also be affected by the Wild Wasteland trait as well, where if you have that trait, then this is no longer the Fist of Rawr, it's the Fist of the North Rawr, which is a reference to the old 80s anime Fist of the North Star, which is an insanely violent anime. I would highly recommend it if you're into that sort of thing, and if you want like a 80s sci-fi Mad Max mixed with like a martial arts movie. It's very strange, very unique, but also really cool. The Fist of Rawr requires 100 unarmed in order to wield, 6 strength in order to wield it as well, so fairly high, at least compared to the other weapons we've talked about. This one does 50 damage on hit, which is pretty good, 98 damage per second, which is also quite nice. This also has a massive 75 damage on crit, which is very high. That's actually one of the highest crits in the entire game. Has a 2 times crit modifier, so you are more likely to hit crits. This costs 24 action points in order to use, so not very high, and it works quite well in a VATS build. Still weighs 10 like the other weapons we've talked about, and this one, instead of having that massive 900 item HP, this one only has 90, which is more normal for most unarmed weapons. This one can break somewhat quick, but you can kill things incredibly fast with this. I think this is one of the best unarmed weapons in the entire game. It's one of my go-tos if I'm going with an unarmed build. It looks really cool, it functions really well, does really high damage per second. The Fist of Rawr, or the Fist of the North Rawr, is going right up into the S tier for an unarmed weapon. I think it is very, very good. So would I recommend any of these weapons? Yes, they're all quite good. Fist of Rawr is one of my favorite unarmed weapons. Tell me your thoughts on these weapons. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye-bye!